Lawyers of Reddit, what is a detail that your client failed to bring up to you that completely lost you the case? He'd sent a photo of his wife's beaten face to his wife with a message saying something along the lines of this: "Do you want this to happen again?" He came across very well in court up to that point, but his mask slipped when that came out. He sounds like someone I know. He can keep the mask on for a while, but it starts to slip when his perceived world isn't reality. A lot of these stories are on the funny side, but this guy here beating his wife's face to a damn pulp deserves to get some serious damn prison time, and also somebody beat his face to a bloody pulp. Low-life scumbag. The best I can glean from these threads is, the best liars wins the case. It's more like, the people who make the truth sound the best for them win the case. Sometimes that's the liars. Is that just a nice way of saying stretching the truth? If your side is in the right, you don't have to stretch the truth, but you do have to make it sound good. Have you ever met a lawyer 98% of them will do or say anything they can, legally that is, to win their case? I'm not saying they don't ever lie, I'm just saying it's not just about lying better. If your client is in the right, you don't have to lie, but you do have to truth better than the opposition can lie. A buddy of mine case as a public defender. A gal was busted on drug charges and told him she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her. He thought, okay, we'll use that. Turns out, she didn't have any drugs on her when they arrested her because she just sold them to an undercover cop. Technically she didn't have any drugs in her lol. Well, technically, just kidding. I do wonder though, if she was actually smart enough to think of that on her own, or she was just being stupid. Well, I guess technically she was being stupid either way. Lol. The attorney likely wasn't all that bright either. Arrest report would show what she did to get arrested, so if they honestly didn't know she sold drugs to an undercover cop, then that's on them really. Honestly not sure how many of these stories are true. People are acting like the only information attorneys get is word of mouth from who they are defending. Honestly not sure how many of these stories are true. Yeah, I was beginning to think the same thing. You start getting into these stories, and then you realize, wait a damn minute, that sounds like bullshit. Absolutely could be true. You often have very little information from the state when you make bail hearings on day one of a case. The discovery obligations don't kick in yet, and the state is often getting a trickling of information through their police sources as the day goes on. It's quite common for them to have extra stuff by the time you make the argument. You also often have clients that provide pretty much nothing you can use for a defense to get them out of custody, but it's still vital that you say something, because the clients with the least helpful stuff for you are often also the clients that are on the lightest hair trigger away from going ballistic on you and accusing you of trying to railroad them. When you know there's next to no chances you'll be able to get them out, you still make a pitch out of something, just to show them that you're trying. If it backfires, oh well, they were already going to stay in custody anyway. Arrest reports would 100% be available for bail hearings. Not in my jurisdiction. We usually get the criminal complaint and a bail evaluation, and nothing else. Sometimes the complaints are incredibly short or vague on details. How long is the usual turnaround for arrest reports versus time to get into a bail hearing? The bail hearing is usually within 24 hours of arrest. We don't get any police reports or any kind of discovery on felony cases by this point, unless the prosecutors want to give it to us. We just get the criminal complaint they file with the court the moment the defendant is charged. Little late to the party, but here goes, and obligatory not my client. Company I worked for at the time was doing due diligence before acquiring a small tech startup. The COO of the tech startup was a well-liked guy in the company, friendly and outgoing. Though we had heard rumblings that the COO was rather hands-on with the work and with female employees. Apparently there was a walkaway package proposed to the COO that would let him keep a sizable portion of his post-acquisition bonus because a young woman who worked in their sales department had filed our complaints against the COO and obtained counsel. I sat in on the meeting with the COO and the company's retained lawyers while they grilled him about his contacts with the young woman. The COO denied ever having contact with her within the company without multiple other people present. Those people said his behavior toward her in the meetings didn't raise any flags. The COO emphatically denied having any contact with her outside of work. The lawyers asked the question a half dozen different ways and each time the COO denied any out of work contact. Later we meet with the woman and her lawyer with the COO not present. Her lawyer gives us a rather graphic card that came with a bouquet of flowers addressed to her from the COO. The guy had an account with a florist linked to his credit card. When the company retained lawyers confronted him, he said, "But I never had contact with her. It's not like I delivered the flowers myself." COO got terminated for cause no walkaway package. At her request the woman was given PTO until after the acquisition, then moved to another one of the companies under our umbrella. I'm sorry for laughing, but reading your comment all I could see was COO, COO, COO all over the place, and now I can't get the idea out of my head that a pigeon in a top hat wrote this. That's an awesome picture to have in my head. Thanks. Very skilled pigeon to write such a long post too, since you know he'd be typing by Hunt and Peck. This is my favorite comment. Hello from the future, I had this exact same thought. Nice. Haha. Hello back. My house was robbed. In addition to all the stuff the thief took, he also stole a bunch of my suits and all of my neckties. I had a big collection, like 100 or so. However, the thief left fingerprints on a hard plastic box that I kept spare change in. Fast forward 3 months, the thief is caught in the act of robbing another house in the same neighborhood. Same detectives on my case and this new theft. They fingerprint the guy and the fingerprints match the ones from my house. At the thief's arraignment, I see him stroll in wearing my suit and my tie. I tell the district attorney, he says there's really no way to prove it. However, the tie he chose to wear was a one-of-kind street map of San Francisco, and I still had all the documentation to prove it. The district attorney's eyes widen, and he informs the judge. The judge has the thief placed under arrest again for possession of stolen property. The thief's lawyer was dumbfounded. It was an ice into a rough situation. I hate that this happened to you, but I love this story, hahaha. Amazing sidebar to the story. Every year my wife's grandmother gave her a pearl for her birthday, Christmas, and other special occasions. By the time we were married my wife had her entire necklace. After the theft, the necklace was gone. Her grandmother had passed, so it was all we really cared about. The rest of it was just stuff. We move out 4 years later. I move hairdresser, and here something hit the floor. It was the pearl necklace. Somehow it had fallen behind the dresser before the robbery or during it, who knows. Bringing it to my wife was one of the best feelings I've ever experienced. This is so cute. That sucks, but that must have been an absolutely epic level of catharsis to witness. I love the way the evidence just ties that case up all neatly. Lawyer in the UK. I acted for a member of a famous pedophile hunting group. My client was charged with various offenses relating to his vigilantism, most seriously, causing grievous bodily harm with intent. He wanted me to fight the case on a public interest offense point that is not available to him in statute or at common law, contrary to my advice. I followed his instructions as I'm bound to do. If the state won't punish pedophiles properly, then it's left to men like my client to take the law into their own hands. A horseshit argument for a whole host of reasons. His laptop was seized by police and submitted for forensic examination. He had a staggeringly huge database of child pornography on it. He himself was a massive pedo. Edit. Spelling edit too. Spelling again. I beat up pedophiles in my spare time. No one will suspect a thing. Pretty much the plot to an arc on SVU. Dude led a neighborhood anti-pedo group after his sister was raped as a kid and later committed suicide. A whole episode of them assuming he kidnapped a girl. He didn't. She just ran away, but later turns out he was trying to kidnap her after she ran away, unbeknownst to everyone. So they apologize and whatnot. A few episodes later, as the only suspect linked to a massive rape case committed suicide, a victim identifies his voice at the police station. They find out the whole story with his sister committing suicide was fake, except the rape. Turns out, he raped her too. The main problem with this is an arc on SVU lol. What's SVU? The arc sounds interesting, but you sound disinterested in the show. Law and Order SVU. The point I was making is 99% of the episodes in SVU are self-contained. and rarely influence other episodes. They even reuse the same actors as different characters. It is the best L&O though. Barn. Especially heinous. Their arcs are some of the best work though. Ludacris's arc was fantastic though infuriating. Michael Lewis led to some great episodes. Stucky was great and totally unexpected. Some of the writing is too heavy-handed. Many of the case, the investigator has some personal stake in this, former victim of abuse, related to victim of rape. At least from some that I watched. In my opinion it is an unskilled piece of trash. It's a criminal investigation show about sexual assaults. I hate how it assumes its audience is stupid. The characters narrate everything, and explain everything like we're 5. I don't like being talked down to. I can notice things on my own. When you find a cell phone, for example, you don't have to announce that it's a cell phone. Your partner in the show can see it. The audience can see it. Most of the dialogue is disposable. I just don't understand why, if you're going to make a TV show, you don't make it the best you can. That's why we have cable. So we can ignore the numbingly predictable trash on the big networks. Minor traffic cases can be the worst for this, believe it or not, because they are short and simple and oftentimes the client isn't there, so if you get blindsided by something critical there's often no chance to consult with them to turn things around. I had a simple speeding case, 70 miles per hour in a 55. No big deal, if she does a driving improvement course they caught, will usually dismiss or reduce those, since her driving record wasn't bad. When I showed up for her, I found out that she had been driving 70 up an unplowed snow lane to get around all the other cars traveling in the lane that had been plowed because they were driving too slow. I didn't know it was even possible to drive 70 on fresh snow. The officer stated he'd already cut her a break by not writing the ticket for reckless driving, and the judge politely agreed he didn't feel comfortable reducing it under those circumstances. When I called her up after court to confirm, she claimed she'd just forgotten to mention it. Now maybe I've lived too much of my life in the South, but that just boggles my mind as a detail you'd forget when hiring a lawyer for that incident. I would have told her in advance that hiring us was a waste of money, not to mention the hassle of taking an 8-hour class, and she should probably just go ahead and pay this one. I legitimately do that all the time during consults. Give my honest assessment if the case is even worth doing, and so by omitting that detail she harmed herself for no reason. At least she took it well and didn't get defensive. Growing up in Iowa, I had to drive through a lot of snow. It's easy to forget that you're driving through snow, especially if it's not super deep. Also, if you do it often enough, it becomes very easy to control the vehicle even at higher speeds. It's similar to driving in heavy rain, but you never risk a random hydroplaning. Possibly random ice. Again, if you practice enough it's pretty easy to control. Only real issue is when the snow is deep/dense enough to slow the vehicle down, because it's rubbing against the bottom or the tires can't get traction. But if you can see where the road is, yeah, 70 doesn't seem unreasonable. I usually stayed 5 to 10 miles per hour under the limit to be safe though. I live in Canada, and I back this statement. If you know how, and are experienced enough, it's pretty easy, as long as it's not too deep. I'm from Minnesota. I got a ticket driving through Nebraska during a snowstorm at 5 to 10 miles an hour over in my old vehicle. The snow was hardly accumulating, and I slowed down if I started to see it on the road, not just on the shoulder, or if there were other drivers around me, until I was past them. Officer acted astonished as he said it took him 8 miles to catch up to me, and I was lucky to not get a reckless driving citation. I laughed and said, "Sir, I'm from Minnesota. I understand your concern, but this isn't bad at all." Paid the ticket, but driving in snow isn't insane if you're on a dead straight Nebraska road in the right vehicle. Exactly. I was at the Grand Canyon during a snowstorm. There was like 1/2 inch of accumulation, maybe, and Arizona drivers were panicking. Just going the speed limit, I passed a line of maybe a dozen cars going 20 under on a flat, straight, well-maintained road because of a little bit of snow. Being from the Midwest, it didn't even feel like I was being zippy. It's funny how weather that is perfectly acceptable in one place will completely shut down another. The moment anything other than sunshine touches our roads, we Arizonians panic. Speed limit 65 miles per hour, wait a dang minute. Is that a drizzle of water I see coming from the sky? Drops to 45 miles per hour. I'm not going to let moisture be the reason I die out in this desert. I'll learn to drive on a 92 Buick. I couldn't even drive after a dusting. This all seems crazy to me, though where I live it doesn't snow much, but it does ice up when it gets cold. Friend of mine is a defense attorney. He was representing a guy with a lengthy record for assault. Basically this guy took an account unit and threw it at his girlfriend. My buddy tells me he was able to get a plea deal for 1 year probation, no jail time. The judge is all ready to accept the deal when he asks the defendant if he had anything he would like to say. The defendant responds, "Yeah, I don't know why they charging me with assault, I never touched her. I just threw an account at her. This is bullshit." Judge rescinded plea deal because of defendant's attitude / lack of remorse, went to trial and got a year in jail. The idea of having an account unit thrown at me is honestly terrifying. It's even worse depending on the model. Some designs don't have anything covering the radiator fins, which tend to be almost knife sharp. There's a reason I only handle our window unit with gloves on. I was thinking it was one of those ones with wheels that doesn't sit in the window. Window one would be way worse. Not to mention pretty hard to do. I'm assuming they mean one of the window units, but they are fairly heavy and I couldn't lob one more than a couple feet. That's exactly why it's terrifying. The smallest ACK window unit will not be less than 40 pounds. Lobbing 40 pounds and getting hit by it is no joke. Chances are that unit was heavier. My 12K BTU is hard for me to carry, yet alone throw. It's too wide for doors, so you have to carry it long ways, which sucks. It sounds like you bring it with you everywhere. My dad fell down the stairs once with an account unit. I wouldn't suggest carrying it too far. Damn, I guess I'll have to sell my hand-arm held portable account unit then. Sure seems like it. Just twice a year, from the basement up the stairs across the house to the window. Damn thing is right around 100 pounds. Yeah, I don't know why, but that does seem scary as hell. I cannot imagine how badly injured someone would be if that happened to them. On the chance it's slightly heavier at 45 pounds, that's like someone throwing a 45 pounds weightlifting plate at you. Even if it's only from a couple feet away, it's going to hurt a lot when it hits, and that will probably continue as it tumbles down your body to the ground. Has sharp metal edges and a sharp corrugated ice metal cheese grate a bit. I've handled dozens of window units and never once would I have guessed 40 plus lb. I had to go look some up. When we moved my in-laws out of their place, we literally just hurled them from the front door to the curb. But yeah, definition wouldn't want to get hit by one. That he filmed his offenses for his YouTube channel. The cops didn't even know. A witness brought it up on day 3 of a trial. It was a nice quick change of plea that afternoon. So you're saying it's just a prank, bro? Isn't a valid legal defense? Not since pranks to V. Bro in 1986. Definitive court case. Landmark case decision that established the "it's just a prank bro" defense is invalid. Did you know that before? That it was the case of Bro vs College which established "don't taste me bro" is not a valid defense for not getting taste. Lawyers know "don't taste me bro" is the case that set the prankcident. The ultimate prankcident. Client said his ex owed him a lot of money and that she was trying to get out of paying him back by getting a protective order against him. Seemed reasonable, so I took his case. At the hearing it came out that they were never a couple, that he was sending sex toys to her residence on a weekly basis, and that she never asked for the thousands of dollars he gave her over the years. Stripper. We lost. He got laughed out of court and he learned a valuable lesson. Tell your lawyer the good and the bad stuff before trial. Guy in prison hired me to request a modification of his sentence because he was doing very well, completing a lot of optional programs, no rule violations, etc. He had his family come in and pay and everything to get started. I asked the family and the client if he had requested modification before, because the law said that for his conviction, he could only request modification twice for any one sentence, regardless of if they were granted or denied. Swore up and down he'd never filed before. You can see where this is going. After spending a few hours going over records and preparing documents, a copy of the CCS, the case record basically, finally arrived. He'd personally filed for modification 6 times, since he was sentenced with handwritten pleadings that were all denied. So the one he hired me for was a waste of time, and would never be considered at all. What was he in for? If he was telling the truth, that he was completing all of those programs and not getting written up for anything, was there something to do with the severity of his crime that made the courts reticent to grant his request? Several counts of burglary and armed robbery. The statute gives him 2 chances to request modification during his sentence, and he used those up, and then some very early in his incarceration, before he'd completed any programs. I'm talking multiple requests in the first year. At that point he hadn't done anything to show he was rehabilitated. He just wanted the court to reconsider his sentence, which is not the point of the modification statute. It wasn't about the severity of the crime, it was a procedural issue. The limit keeps inmates from bombarding the court with constant requests like his, and allows the courts to just automatically reject excessive requests. So it had nothing to do with the merits. He had just screwed up by not consulting a lawyer before filing a bunch of requests. And then lying to me, causing me to do work on a matter that had no chance of accomplishing anything. Is there like a period you can wait before you can make modifications again? This sounds like a big flaw in the legal system, though. It's expensive to hire a lawyer, so it makes sense that he would have tried to do some of this on his own without realizing that he was hurting himself by doing so. It sounds like once he realized what needed to be done, he did it. The biggest issue with people trying to avoid hiring a lawyer is that understanding the rules is incredibly challenging if you're not fluent in legal jargon. The law should punish you for committing a crime, it shouldn't punish you for being poor. Haven't you heard? Being poor is a crime these days. Did he realize the handwritten letters were the same procedure as the hiring a lawyer and going through the process? Why does the legal system tack restrictions onto sentences like that? The limit keeps inmates from bombarding the court with constant requests like his, and allows the courts to just automatically reject excessive requests. It would make more sense to limit it to something like once a year. Yeah, it seems unnecessarily cruel to say, hey, you're showing signs of rehabilitation and making strides to be a productive member of society. But you bothered us twice 10 years ago, so fuck off. Especially because if you were in prison you would try everything to get out, including possibly poorly thought out handwritten requests. Seems pretty unfair.